Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 88th Purdue Pest Management Conference. Just a quick reminder, at the end of each presentation, there's a QR code, and the tech people have reminded me, or asked me to remind you, to use your camera to get that QR code and to not use the app, that it won't register. So make sure you use your camera on that. So, all right, thank you. Our first speaker this afternoon, Dr. Faith Oy. She spoke yesterday, and if you missed that, you missed a great talk on One Health and how it involves pest control. Her talk both from yesterday and today will be on the virtual, so if you're here, you can start watching that. I think it's mid-March that they'll have that up. So if you did miss that first one, you'll want to watch that. Again, thank you for being here for this afternoon and supporting the conference. Dr. Faith Oy is an extension professor and director of Pest Management University down in Florida. She has done several hundred talks and probably twice that many publications. She does a hands-on type, so she's not your typical professor that's going to stand up on a podium and talk to you. Her university is hands-on. So I'm not going to ramble on. I'm just going to introduce Dr. Faith Oy and give her a huge Purdue welcome. Thank you.
I was going to be all stressed out because my flight was supposed to leave at 6, so I was going to have to leave here exactly at 3, and I just got a delay notice, so I don't have to leave. My flight's delayed, so I have a little bit of breathing time here. So Doug's going to keep me on time, and we're going to start with termites. So how many of you guys are actually doing termite work right now? Okay, excellent. What's your biggest problem in termites? Okay, not the customers, but what's the biggest problem in termites? I can't hear. I heard somebody say something. No? Eclectic construction, and what was that up there? Gravel. Okay, well, we'll talk about that too. So I'm going to talk about biology, entry points, and control. I wanted to bring your attention to this. Some of us spent the last year working on this book on Formosan's. Now, why would I talk to you about Formosan subterranean termites in Indiana? Well, we didn't think we were going to get them in a lot of places in the U.S. But we do things to our building construction, and we do things to keep temperatures real comfortable for us. So we're seeing invasive species survive in areas outside their native range, right? Because it's comfortable for us. You may see them someplace. The second thing is, with the changes in our industry, some of you guys belong to multinational companies that are going to be working in territories that this could be an issue, this termite. So just keep your eyes open on that. This is my blood, sweat, and tears chapter here on monitoring and inspections. And in this chapter, I have a section on how forensic inspections go, and that's the lawsuit side of things, okay? So my friends reviewed the chapter, and they said, oh, you're gonna get it for this part. But I thought, hey, this is part of what we do. So I started last year with about 6 cases attorneys had called. And our swarm season starts in January, so that's when people notice that they have an issue, right? And that's when they call their attorneys. And what I tell the PMPs in Florida is, by the time somebody finds me at the University of Florida to get information, it's bad. Okay, so you don't want them to find me, especially with termite issues and what, oh, wait, here we go. In our industry, we have always talked about using this prismatic sheen as a way to differentiate drywood termite wings. And it's really hard to get this picture. So I asked our photographer at the department, can you get this prismatic sheen? And he took, I don't know how long he took to get this picture, but it's now in that book chapter. And it's a gorgeous picture of what prismatic sheen looks like. When we're training our new technicians, this is a hard character to see, okay? So this area, you might not have so much drywood termite activity. In Florida, we got a lot. And these kind of color characteristics, it's good to have a comparison, but I wanted to show this picture off because it is so cool. Okay, so I want to start by emphasizing, and this is what we need to make sure our technicians understand, right? How to tell the difference between ants and termites. Is the treatment for ants or termites the same? Okay, we make mistakes all the time. So around this time of year, in January, when the swarmers come out, inevitably I get somebody to call me and go, hey Faith, can I bring a customer by so we can look at your scope? And I was like, sure. So they bring their samples by, and the stories have gone like this. Company XYZ has recommended a fumigation, okay? Fumigations are really expensive, right? But I think that the ID is incorrect, and I either get ants or I get subterranean termites. And that's what they're trying to bring the customer in to look through magnification and get somebody to confirm the ID, and it's not comfortable when it's another company that has made the mistake. Yeah, so ID is going to be really important. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we need to know the difference between ants and termites. Ants have a waist and the termites don't. And if you have the wings, the Isoptera, the forewing is the same shape and size as the hind wing, and you don't see that with the ants, okay? Here's the other place that we get into trouble. What is this? Not carpenter ants. How do we describe this? If you're writing a report, what are the words that you use to describe this? Somebody say it? Along the grain. There's feeding along the grain of the wood, okay? So one of the things that I want us to kind of be mindful of as I go through this presentation are the words that we use when we're writing reports. And we need to train our technicians on how to write in the lingo of our industry to avoid litigation. Because you know what? I got 6 attorneys in my family. I love them, but I don't want to have to deal with attorneys on the industry side of things because we didn't know how to describe what subterranean termite damage looked like. So what I've really been emphasizing is let's use common vernacular, common wording so that there's an understanding of what we're dealing with. Okay, so how about that? Okay, that's a soldier, right? And how do you know it's a soldier? Sclerotized head, and this is a subterranean termite soldier because the mandibles are smooth. This pronotum, it's a shield-like structure that sits on the top of the thorax, is narrower, it really is narrower, than the head, the width of the head and the body, and the head is rectangular. That's the termite that you have up in this area here. Okay, so these are Reticulotermes subterranean termites. These are the swarmers that are going to come out in spring. They're nice and shiny and dark, and they swarm during the daytime. So these are bits of information that we can use to put together a picture of what subterranean termite activity looks like. So these guys here, oh, wow, that was fast. Let me go back. Our subterranean termites, we are not only responsible for protecting structures, but we also protect contents. So One of my former students, he's a pest control guy, and he had some pesticides in storage. And he goes, check this out. That's a box of pesticides that the termites had gotten into in his storage. I mean, how rude, right? So these, we have to protect contents as well. And I kind of joke about this, but if you ever had to replace cabinetry, that can be really expensive as well. So those are some of the things that we do. And there's not any easy button as far as termite control is concerned. So this is something that we really have to do the hands-on. It's still a high liability area. So I really appreciate every single one of you being in this audience today after lunch, right? This is the education part. And then there is training, and that's going to be the hands-on part. You cannot learn how to do pest control via PowerPoint or sitting in front of a computer. You just got to go and do it, okay? So I know a lot of you have really excellent training programs. We have one that we run. We practice trenching. We practice measuring. We practice math, just like you have this morning. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that when we get to it. But this was in when my son was little. I used to drop him off at school. And this was in his first grade classroom. And there's nothing more true than this statement as when it comes to termite work. If you can't take the time to do it right, you must make the time to do it over, okay? This is a very high litigation area for us still. So you guys here's termite probability distribution, and you're in a moderate to heavy region, so this is gonna be of some concern for you. I talked in the One Health talk about my concern that there's no federally mandated surveillance for pests that are related to structures, right? So I put a definition up here about surveillance versus monitoring. Surveillance is a continual process to find undetected cases of invasive termites. And monitoring is evaluation over time designed to provide feedback. So Blumenfeld and Vargo in 2020 published a paper where they went through 100 years of samples from the USDA. And what they found was amazing. So Florida had a lot of these non-native termite interceptions, okay? So not surprising, right? Florida, New York, Canada, Louisiana. It's not to say that things don't happen in Indiana either. And these termites that they found were serious invasive termites with high potential to do damage. There's continual work on the molecular side of things. We're finding new species all the time because of the refinement of the methods. And I only put this up here to let you know that things change. So when I went to school, and my son says, "You went to school when dirt was made, Mom," right? So when I went to school when dirt was made, there were 3 Reticulotermes species. It was Reticulotermes flavipes, Reticulotermes virginicus, and Reticulotermes hageni, and the swarming season was slightly different for each of those. We have molecular methods now that are like, okay, I can't even keep up with how you guys are naming these things anymore. From a control perspective, on the label, it's just going to be the genus that we're going to be worried about. But it's just to say that it's a dynamic system, so we need to keep up. Oh, she's talking about Florida. Okay, Southeast has more termite species than any other area. That is true. We export them to you. That's why I put this up there. So in the US, we generally talk about 3 groups, right? Dry woods, damp woods, and subs. So what do we do for damp wood termites? Nothing, right? Take care of that water, yeah? What about dry wood termites? You can fumigate, but what else? Treat the galleries. What's your fumigation market like in Indiana? It's almost 0? Okay, we have the 2nd largest fumigation market in the US and Florida, so people usually just throw a tent over it, but it's still expensive. Drywood termites, and then we have subterranean termites, and I'm going to spend most of my time talking about subs because that's where we really have most of our liability and damage. In the U.S., we only have, I say only 45 species because there are littler countries that have like 200 and 300 species, like Thailand, right? And 23 of these species are in Florida. Why do you think that is? It's tropical. What else? It's warm, it's wet. What else? Poor construction. I'm not going to deny that statement. Okay? I've seen a bunch of that. We have more urban entomologists in the state of Florida looking for termites than any other state in the US. Okay? So we have an entire team down in Fort Lauderdale, and that's what they do, and they love it, and I'm so grateful to them. But they're looking for them. So we have to look for these insects because they're cryptic, right? They're hiding from us. So if we're not aware of what to look for, it could easily be years. And that's what happened to us in Florida with the Formosan subterranean termite. So with the Formosans, we probably had it in the state for at least 5 years. And then there was a massive swarm. So drywood termites, when they swarm, maybe you get a couple of dozen, right, in average infestation. But we're talking hundreds and thousands of termites that swarmed. And it was the same time of year, and it was a golden body, and they swarmed at dusk. So in Florida, we were used to having our subterranean termites swarm at dusk in the morning, and these were coming out en masse at dusk. And then a very smart pest control operator went, this is not normal, okay? So again, I'm giving you this example because it is not usually researchers or university people who find these invasives and things that become problems for structures. It's you all, because somebody was really smart and went, this is not whatever we think it is. We need to get somebody to do an ID. That smart, very smart pest control operator was then ultimately responsible for building that Fort Lauderdale group, because the university could then go to the legislature and say, we need funding because now we have this really bad invasive species in an area where real estate is really expensive, right? Fort Lauderdale. So that's the story that I have about all of this. We actually have 7 invasive termites, and we have a group that continues to look for these termites, and there's a map that I'll share with you a little bit later. But for us in general, we talk about these drywoods, dampwoods, and subterranean termites, and now we have a 4th in the family, Termitidae, or it's a subfamily now, I guess, and it is going to be the conehead termite. What do you see? Somebody said something? There's a mud tunnel in the mortar, right? You have to be very detail-oriented, and you have to know what you're looking for. This was actually a blown WDO inspection, okay? They charged $35 for this WDO inspection. So they start renovating, and they go around the door with jam. First, it looked like it was just a little bit of dry rot down there. I'm going to change the frame, okay? You know when the attorney calls you up and goes, Faith, you got to come out here, man. This is amazing. That's never good. It ended up being a teardown because the guy, for a $35 inspection, missed this. So we want to make sure that the technicians who are training to do these kinds of inspections are detail-oriented and they know what to look for. All right. So, tell me about this. What do you think this is? So this is challenges in termite control, right? It's a people issue. What do you think is going on here? Pest control guy sent this to me. What? What do you think it is? They pulled the bait stations and left them there. No, it's even worse than that. Okay. This is a realtor's version of termite control. Okay? So he gets to this house to do a 13645, which is our version of a WDO inspection. And this is what he finds. Yeah, Shep?
So those are above ground stations.
Those are well, they kind of are now, right? So people are challenged when we're doing termite control, no? What can you tell me about this? That's kind of ugly. I thought it was beautiful. What are you talking about? So this is South Florida. So another one of my pest control guys emailed it to me. Because you know what his question was? What species do you think did this? So what species do you think did this? Well, it's a subterranean, but Florida, we have retics, we have coptotermes, right? So he's asking me for a species identification based on a mud tube. And I'm looking at this thing and it's like, I don't know, because I don't have the bug. I'm hedging. And he's pressing me. He's like, come on, tell me what species this is. I don't know, Formosan, because, you know, Formosans can have up to 10 million individuals in a colony, and they can build these massive tubes, and generally our retics are not that big. And he's like, gotcha. It's our native subterranean termite. It was just there for a really long time. So it's a retic tube in a very high-end neighborhood down in Miami. Okay? So that's the size of the tube. It's impressive. It's reticular termes, yeah. So is that, I think it's cool. I think you guys are so lucky you get to see all this cool stuff out in the field. So tell me about this. Okay, let me give you the backdrop on this. This is the entomology department that I go to every day when I'm not traveling and out having fun with you folks. So they pull the baseboard off, but tell me what your observations are here. Backing of the carpeting. You know, that's the outside foundation wall part, but we also have things like this happening on the inside foundation walls in the building, because we have cold joints, right, in there. But you see how these things are, you see how the tubes are following the guidelines? That's a characteristic of subterranean termites, because they're blind, soft-bodied insects, right? And when we say blind, we don't mean like totally blind. They have like photoreceptors, and they can feel their way around, and they have an excellent method of communication. But I love swarm season at the entomology department because I never know where there's termites are going to show up. It's so cool. Okay? I think it was that typical, oh, okay, wait. Tell me, do you guys have this? Okay, do we have a regulator here in the audience? Do we have any regulators? Nobody wants to admit that they're a regulator. Okay, no, I know I'm being taped too. So let me be really careful here. Are you a visual and accessible state? Is that the bar for your inspection? Yes? Okay, so you're visual and accessible state. We are too. Is that visual? Well, you know, so this is our training house, okay? This is the house that we use for training. And we were so excited that we actually got termites in the floor joist, in the part of the crawl space that was, well, it was not too hard to get to, but you could actually see this stuff. And we're telling our PMPs, don't break the tubes off, because you know how we are, right? Oh, look, let's see if it's active. Okay. No, he's like, don't break the tubes, because we want it there for other classes. Foam has become quite an issue for us because we use it a lot in building for insulation purposes, right? Check that out. That's the part of the crawl space of my training house. My tubes are gone because we don't take direction very well. Don't touch those tubes. What? Right? But this is really an amazing. How long did it take that to get that? It was about a year or 2 years, maybe. Not too long for that. Okay, so we have challenges with building construction, and the solutions that we are going to evolve with this, and we're going to have solutions here. But I do the parade homes every year. And I love seeing all that landscape that they put around the curb, but I want to see this stuff because I want to know what's going to be an impediment to us doing inspections and then therefore making better control recommendations. So in the attic spaces now, it used to be that I'm not very tall, but I could stand up in there. I'm having a hard time getting through some of these newer constructed homes because of the ductwork that's up there right now. Oh, and I did attic inspections in July in South Florida. It was awesome this year, I gotta tell you, okay? I lost a lot of weight with water, so, yeah, just lots of water. So what does this mean? All this foam, it's probably going to impact if you're using detection technology as well. Is anybody using detection technology as part of their inspections for termites? No, not even my consulting guys here. Huh? Are you using it? See, Donnie's trying to avert my eyes right now, so I'm looking right at him. What are you using for detection? IR cameras doesn't work through that. Why do we use foam insulation? Keeps the temperature even, right? So now you don't have that temperature differential. What else do you use? Moisture meter, same thing. Temperature probes, the same thing. Because the purpose of insulation is to keep the environment kind of steady, right? The only thing where they picked up termite activity was using the Termitrack, because that's a motion detector kind of thing in one place. And so for me, a rep of one is not good enough. I want to see this replicated. But the take-home message for this study for me was that all the detection technologies that we're using, if you're trying to use it through foam, it may become an impediment for us. So have we heard about foam before? Who's been in this industry long enough to have heard about foam? Like rigid foam board insulation. Oh, raise your hand, Donnie. You've been doing this since you were 7. Okay. So yes, we have. And in fact, in 1995, Smith and Zingoli actually published a survey of from the South Carolina Pest Control Association, where 34% of companies reported RBI in structures that they treated. So I'll tell you about this one in a little bit. 43 then started refusing treatment, and if they treated, 33% did not offer a guarantee. 12% were sued because of rigid foam board that hid damage. So this one here is a really interesting case. So this is a long time ago. I first started, I was at Auburn. I get a call from a pest control company. 3rd time this house has swarmed. They put 865 gallons of dragnet in the front porch over 3 years. Pest control operator was a really good guy. He was very thorough. That's what it looked like. Tell me what the issue was with putting 865 gallons of dragnet in the front porch. Talk to me about the product first, characteristics of the product. Fast kill and repellent, right? So the termites were up in the wall, and then they came down, and then they went, oh, poison, and then they went back up in the wall. And that's why they swarmed 3 consecutive years in a row. So take-home message here is the product that you select is very important in terms of your control, right? Contributing to your control there. This rigid, they eventually cut that rigid foam board insulation off, and the swarming stopped after that. But that was a lot. They had to take that front porch off. This is This is a hospital in Mobile. How many of you guys remember Drive It? No? Yeah? Are you sure you're from Indiana? Because you sound like you have all the problems that we had in the South. Yeah? New Mexico. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So this is Formosan subterranean termite coming up through this wall here. And Donnie and I have a mutual friend who took me down to this site, and he took his pocket knife out, and you could actually stick his knife through the wall because it's styrofoam. Okay, it was basically styrofoam. And I'm bringing all of these older pictures up because some of these structures still exist. And in our industry, we inherit existing structures, right, to protect and control. So we see a lot of variability. It's not just the new building code stuff that I'm going to run into. So this is Formosan that's running up through the wall, through the styrofoam there. Somebody had mentioned gravel as an issue. What's the issue with gravel? Okay, get a lot of moisture, and sometimes they put a vapor barrier that actually holds in the moisture. It's pretty though, right? When you put it out there. It's a great landscaping material. So Long and Thorne in 1990 something actually ran a study where they put monitors underneath different types of mulches, organic and inorganic mulches. And the mulch that received the highest number of hits and the most consumption underneath was gravel. Okay? So now I go to these parade homes, and I'll show you a picture of this too. It's beautiful because everybody thinks we're trying to xeriscape and we're putting gravel there to just make pretty patterns. And all I'm thinking is termites, because the gravel creates this high moisture situation and they don't have to work as hard to create those galleries, right? So termites will take 4 or 5 grains of sand in their mouth at a time. Somebody actually counted this, some poor grad student. And then they move that sand, and that's how they create the galleries. So creating galleries is a lot of work. If you can just walk through a space instead of doing that kind of work, wouldn't you do that too? Yeah, okay. So here's some other challenges to building construction that we have here. So I am just going to tell you right up front, this is where baiting can work really well. So when your representative in your state legislature calls you up and goes, what is the University of Florida doing to take care of termites because I got them in my house? You go, right? This is going all the way up to the 3rd floor here, and this is all foam because we put foam in the walls for insulative purposes to kind of impede sound from going through them. This is rigid foam board insulation going below grade. This subdivision, almost every house had a termite issue, and it was difficult construction. So here's my friend, right? The construction issue. How do you take care of termites if you can't get a liquid termiticide to it? Baits are a good option because you're actually going to impact the entire colony. If you don't have termites in the area, then the structure is no longer at risk. So termite prevention recommendations really haven't changed for, now it's almost 90 years, probably 100, but we have changed our building construction types. So here's what's bad, right? This is from Colfoyd. If you guys don't have this book, 1934, I still use it. It's awesome, okay, this book. Wood to ground contact. How many of you guys still see that? Right? Plant roots leading to the foundation wall. Thank you, landscape architects. Right? Because to a blind, soft-bodied insect, they're going to run into that root and go, oh, I'm just going to follow this. So, watering the walls. Yeah, I see that at the entomology department almost every day. No inspection space and moisture. Anytime we see moisture, it's going to be great for the termites, probably not so good for us. So is this a conducive condition? Come to the entomology department. That's my building. Okay? Every month we have somebody from maintenance. They come and check the sprinkler heads. I don't know what they're doing because it's still directed at the wall. Okay, Conducive condition? Yeah, that's my training house. It takes IFAS a while sometimes to spread that mulch. So what's wrong with this picture here? So now we're talking about entry points, right? So what's wrong here? It's above grade, but what else? It's mulch. Okay, we put mulch down to keep the temperature even, to keep the moisture even, but the way that they've piled it up here, you got no inspection space, right? If you wanted to go check it out. Great curb appeal at this house, no? This is my Parade of Home series here. And I say, I wish I could have my lawn like that. And we see all this kind of stuff too. We do things around the house that becomes inadvertently a conducive condition for termites. So that is the wall. I know it's a really weird perspective here. That's a sidewalk. And then there's this, like, I don't know, 8-inch of soil that they put mulch in between. And somebody must have known it was a bad idea because they also popped a Centricon station in there. I don't know who thinks this is a good idea to build homes like this. So conducive conditions can start, at building construction. Not everything's going to look clean like that. We get stuff like that, right? Left. How about this? Entry points, right? So does the term critical area ring a bell? So your label can give you guidance as to how termites will get into structures, because on the label, the termiticide area, termiticide directions, we have specific directions for how to treat critical areas, right? And I looked at this when I went to see this. Okay, I'm sneaking onto these sites at this point, but I don't understand how all this piping is supposed to work. So somebody with some plumbing experience is going to have to explain that to me at some later point there. So we do training. We have over 60 building construction elements. And what we run our guys through is you have to identify what it is. You have to be able to tell us how to treat it with a repellent termiticide, because we don't want just trench and treat. And we need to be doing something similar with the rest of our termite technicians. My first job out of school a long time ago was at Auburn. And it took me 3 years of running back and forth with Bruce Alverson down to Mobile to figure out how building construction worked, because that's not my background, right? He told me some of the guys in the field were very kind, and they said, you have a lot of book smarts, but child, we have to learn now. So I really have been very appreciative of those who have spent time. We get out there and we identify how the termites get in, treat it with a repellent termiticide, because trench and treat might go away one day. Okay, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building construction changes now. How many of you guys have seen this? Okay, where have you seen it? Downtown Albuquerque. Yeah, Albuquerque has. In Indiana, there are probably 5 projects, I think I saw, that are going to be mass timber construction. So they have figured out a way to take wood products and just, the strength is really pretty incredible, because they're using epoxy to kind of glue these wood planks and whatnot together. So if you walk through, I think it was Concourse D at the Raleigh airport, it's mass timber, okay? Mass timber construction there. The problem is this. We have these buildings. The building code, the International Building Code 2021, allows mass timber construction to go up to, I think it's like 18 stories now. Yeah, with mass timber. But there's a long list of research needs that they have acknowledged, including the termite control part. And I was thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to keep an eye on those structures as we go out there. So in the absence of any surveillance system in the US for structural pests, it makes this control part imperative. And again, the industry becomes super important, right? So nobody's looking to prevent the type of pests that we deal with. So inevitably, it's going to have to be effective controls. So product efficacy is going to depend on the inherent properties of the product, the built environment, and the competency of the applicator. We have to do math, you guys. Okay, so Cassie, how many of you guys were in Cassie's program this morning? Okay, there's got to be a way for us to like take that back and apply it, okay, and learn how to do that really well. So here are the types of controls that we have for subterranean termites. We have baits, we have soil termiticides, we have baits, we have wood treatments, and we have mesh, stainless steel mesh that is usually in the purview of the building construction industry. I put this up as kind of an example. It's what we do in our classes. So we have scope time. We have a generation of our industry that has learned like this, sitting, right? So I started putting out specimens. It's like setting up a lab, Shep, every single class. And we put specimens out under the scope. And at first I wasn't taking data, but I started noticing, I've had guys come going, oh man, I'm so depressed. What? Are you not enjoying my class? No, I've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I got every single ID wrong when we actually see the bugs under a scope. So why is that? What's that? Well, no practice, but isn't it different to see the bugs up on a ginormous screen like this versus seeing it even as a specimen or out in the field, right? How many of you guys are on some of those Facebook groups? Yeah, social media for pest control. How many ID questions do we get on that? Right? That's why Daniel Dye is so popular. And that's why Lou Sorkin's so popular, because they can look at those things and tell you, oh, this is what it is. But they have experience with scope time. We get out, we do stuff. There is classroom learning. We do math, a lot of math. And then we crawl. So termite control is really complex. There's regulations, laws, contractual requirements. We have to work across industries. How many of you guys have a really good relationship with the builders who you work with? And I'm making the assumption that the pre-treat market is still alive in Indiana. Is the pre-treat market alive? Yeah? No? Okay, Colorado's different. Everybody's moving out there. Okay? But in Indiana, what kind of a pre-treat market do you have here? He's going like that to me. Okay, not so much. Well, housing is going to come back, and that pre-treat market is going to become important. The methods of control are going to be approved by our regulators. So what's the difference between the products that you use versus what you can find on YouTube? Like a home remedy. I'm not talking about somebody buying Termidor off Amazon or something. What's the difference? They're actually performance standards to products that claim structural protection. And our manufacturers spend a lot of money to make sure that the products that have a structural protection claim on them, right, meet those EPA standards. There's a huge difference between what you do as professionals and the products that you use. This is a reason why people should come to us, right, in this industry, versus somebody who's saying, I'm not kidding you, you should use oil and vinegar and lemon to take care of your termite problem. I have found that on the internet in many places, okay? So this is part of why termite control is really complex. So I have a lot of that information in this publication here, and I just wanted I'm trying to advance. Okay, there we go. So I think we've kind of come full circle, y'all. So in 1933, a Terminix manager wrote, "It is absolutely impossible for anyone to successfully treat a termite-infested structure by inexpensively squirting or otherwise applying a few gallons of some termiticide. A comprehensive knowledge of the habits of termites together with the proper equipment and a chemical which has proved its efficacy against termites are all necessary requirements. Even then, because of the human factor involved, the treatment work, human factor involved in the treatment work, perfect success cannot always be expected. Are we still here? Right? So has anybody got on YouTube and actually seen somebody who's not a PMP apply a termiticide out there? This is what has been worrisome to me, because I've seen some of that, and they actually do a pretty good job, okay? Some of them are bad, but some of them actually do a thorough job. And when we have too many jobs to do in a day, we rush, okay? So we want to make sure that our applications are going to be as thorough as possible here. There is no alternative to professional termite control, because professional termite control is one of the most tightly regulated parts of the industry. We have product performance standards, and the building code itself doesn't leave very much room for any kind of wiggle there. So in summary here, termites are complex. They have time. Termiticides are applied in an imperfect world, so you need to be as perfect as possible. And diagnosing building construction that can be challenging can impact your treatment. We have to do math. Remember the concept of half-life, which is what I'm going to cover next, okay? And be thorough in the inspections and documentation to avoid arguments that lead to predicting the date of damage. How many of you have actually worked with an attorney? Except you two guys. Okay, maybe you two guys. And maybe not Dan. He's looking, he's averting his stare. Donnie Oswald, how long has this termite damage been here? Why can't you tell me? I mean, you're an expert witness. Wait, I'm gonna come down to you, hang on. They can't hear you. So this is how expert witnessing goes, right? Can you tell me when this damage started? Was it, because what they're trying to get to is whether it was in the time of your contract, right?
So I get this question quite frequently, is to if we can date the damage. Well, you know, did it happen at this point in time or that point in time? Because again, like Faith said, we're just trying to, what the attorneys are trying to do is trying to point the liability toward you. So we have to educate the attorneys that are there that you can't date damage by just looking at it. You don't know when that damage happened. There are some ways to kind of get there a little bit, but you have to put it in context with other things.
So why does your report then say that? So what I'm going to tell you right now is that because you failed to treat this house, this damage exists, and the wood decay fungi that you see is a result of the termites bringing the water in. So what's your answer to that?
I plead the. Give me some Tylenol first. Yeah. That's a whole hour's worth of discussion right there. Just trying to figure out all that kind of stuff, because you just can't. It's impossible to do.
So just trying to give you an example of some of the stuff that we deal with when we're talking to attorneys and when we get called in and some of us get subpoenaed, and it's a very difficult thing because there's a certain body of literature that they're using to make that allegation. So what I'm trying to get to right now, I'm going to get to the half-life part, and I'm going to get to the part where it's going to be really important for us to be thorough in our applications, as thorough as possible, and you have to do the math. So when I get called in as an expert, I get a file, including the treatment records, right? If you have the gallons of termiticide anywhere on your service ticket, I can calculate based on the structure, because I'll go out there and measure it, right? How much termiticide should have been put out there. because now I understand a little bit about building construction, and if I don't understand, I'm gonna call somebody in to tell me, because the amount of termiticide that you're gonna put out for a mono slab versus a floating versus a suspended is gonna be different, yeah? And if your amount of termiticide is short, that's a problem. So we need to be able to do that math. Don't ever get into this trap of predicting damage, and that's why our education, training, education, and implementation is critical. They say that it's not if, but when we're gonna get sued in this industry. I actually have a pest control guy who has never been sued, okay? And it's because he says he always takes care of his customer. He communicates with that customer. He tries to figure out what happened. So that communication piece is really important for us. And now I can't flip my slides from down here. Okay. So termites globally, I'm gonna go back a little bit. We have like 80 invasive species that come into the US. In 1876, the recommendations to use termite-proof construction, we already knew about it. And in this publication, they talked about how people didn't want to admit that they had termite damage because they knew their property value was going to decrease. They knew that humans spread termites and that there was an inability to control termites just with some kind of pesticide or termiticide alone. We create this kind of building environment. So where's Dushana? I saw you. That's the convention center. We do this on purpose. We're making these green roofs now, and it's gorgeous, and it is energy efficient, and if you have termites in there, how wonderful for them, because you're watering them on a regular basis, okay? We've known about conducive conditions for over 100 years. I put this kind of stuff up here because, oh man, there are a couple of things that if I never had to say again, I would be so happy. One of them is the German cockroach has 2 stripes on its pronotum, okay? And another one is no wood-to-ground contact when you're talking termites. But we see it over and over and over again. So this has been, this has all been here. I love this part here. So this isn't Cofoid. Almost a century ago, pest control companies developed solutions. Terminex was a liquid mixture of orthodichlorobenzene, toxic solvents, and toxic salts. We don't know exactly what that was. Applied to exposed soil and wood. And it was produced by the E.L. Bruce Company and applied at a rate of 1 gallon per 10 feet with 5-year guarantee. How many of us are still doing the 5-year guarantee? Okay, nobody wants to say anything, but I still hear of folks giving 5-year guarantees. I still hear folks with lifetime guarantees. And with all the mergers and acquisitions that are going on, I'd be really careful about what kind of contracts you're absorbing. That's just me, okay? Because we've seen some not great outcomes here. 1 gallon per 10 square feet. Where do you think that number came from? This is a 100-year-old document, you guys. 1 per 10. Where did that come from? That's enough to wet the top 2 inches of the soil. We haven't changed our termiticide rates in a century, okay? So we have some technology or some application methods that are not great. Those are all the active ingredients that we've gone through for termiticides. We had some really tough stuff that we were putting out there for a while. Remember chlordine? Yeah, you remember chlordine? Was it good? It was excellent, right? You're waiting for it to come back. So sorry, not gonna happen. You know why it was so great? We're putting it out at 8 times probably the rate that we needed. So somebody in 1970 something went back and looked at that label rate, and they did a bracketing, and what they found is at 1/8%, we're putting it out at 1% back then, right? And the 1% was probably, was it 1 glug or 2 glugs? Just asking, okay? So 1/8% provided 100% protection for 21 years in a field study. Who wants that, right? We would, but the EPA is going, nuh-uh, not happening anymore. So back then, probably that 5-year warranty was okay. So I pulled the old chlordane label, and this is how much active ingredient was in there. I'm looking at Doug. How am I doing? Okay, so I pulled this old chlordane label. It's 73. See my dyslexia kicking in right now? It's 73% technical chlordane. That's a lot. That's a lot of active ingredient there. That means that translates out to 8 pounds of chlordine per gallon. We love Termite, right? Pretty effective. It's 9.1% fipronil. And that is 0.8 pounds of fipronil per gallon in that gallon. That's why the measuring is so important for us these days. We can't do 1 glug or 2 glug. You have to actually measure now. And you want to measure because it could be quite expensive if you don't. So there are 2 times that we can protect a structure at new construction and at post-construction. So here's my half-life thing. This actually comes from, it's a radioactivity degradation curve here. So I'm going to start with this. So this guy, George Box and Cox, they're big statistician guys. And he came up with this. All models are wrong, but some are useful. Okay, you guys got that? All models are wrong, because I don't want you to freak out when I show you this next set of slides. Got it? So I went through and I looked for some information that I could plug into this model, this half-life model. So at this 1 here, that's the number of days that it would take for a full rate of fipronil, which is 0.06, to drop by half, okay? It's 223 days if we use Sarin's calculations, information there. If you come out 5 half-lives here, you're gonna have 3% of your product left, and that's 1.9 parts per million. You gotta start exactly at what the label is saying, because the models are telling us that the degradation curve, at least for the samples that we had in that Sarin publication, it's not a whole lot that's left over. So I had a guy come up to me after I gave this talk the first time, and he was like, OMG, I'm still given a 5-year warranty. So this curve here, it's curvilinear, right? So in the beginning, there's a lot of degradation, and then it kind of like tapers off as time goes through. It's not a linear model here. We know that you can have mortality with about 1 ppm, and I am not saying to take your tank and rinse it out on somebody's property just to get 1 ppm, okay? But what I am saying is that it is still possible to have enough so that you have that mortality there. We know from the Gulfport trials that you can have 100% protection for up to 12 years. And actually, I think we're past that with most of these sites. So there's a lot of variability is all I'm saying when we put out these soil termiticides. Imidacloprid it's similar, right? So if you look at this, so we're putting it out at, if you use 0.1 instead of the 0.05, then you're at 166 days for your half-life, and then you're down to 1.56 parts per million. It's not a lot. So if you're starting with like chlordane with 73%, that's one thing. But if you're starting with the current termiticides, because of our active ingredients and the way that they've changed and the amount that's in our products these days, we need to be spot on. We don't have any time to, I'm looking at you again. Okay, so I have a couple of other things that I wanted to go over here. So we have performance standards that we have proposed to, and we want to see some of the performance standards changed to kind of keep up with the termite species that are moving around the world, and for the active ingredients that we have currently today, and to accommodate the different types of building construction that we have. I want to do one more, I want to show you one more thing about baits here. I'm going to swap out, oh, they took my clicker here. All right, let's do this fast. So timing is everything, right? So COVID, we had trials going on, and during COVID, we couldn't travel, so we couldn't do the assessment. I had a bait trial going at 5 cabins. In 2021, I get this call. The termites are flying everywhere. So I finally get permission to travel. We get up there, and what has happened is that the Formosan subs have eaten these cabins. It's a 4-H camp. They don't have any money for replacement, right? We do the inspection, and what we find out, though, is none of the cabins that had Traylona around them, even when we missed that one inspection cycle because of COVID, none of them were infested. It was all the other buildings on the site. So when we talk about how subterranean termites get into a structure, we're looking at all kinds of things like cracks in the slabs, cold joints and whatnot. This is pretty spectacular damage here, but in this particular case, the termites just followed up a tree branch and then they made their way in there. Cool, right? Don't you want Formosans in their area? They are amazing. Okay, so this particular cabin here was a trench and treat 3 times, and they still had termites. And when they cut the branch off there, it stopped. So I'm gonna leave you with this beautiful picture here of termites that had swarmed when there was no protection around it. And I need to go flip through to get to the QR code, okay? So if anybody has questions, oh, thank you. If anybody has questions, I guess I'm gonna be around for a little bit because my flight's delayed now, okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great information.